I want to discuss how red love is no real love at all, because we're returning to the well-worn topic of family abolition that some leftists want to push on us. A lot of the more radical socialist types have been arguing that we need to abolish the family for nigh on 200 years, and it of course is a completely utopian subject that will never actually work, and thankfully most people out there don't like the idea of it just on the face of it, because if somebody comes up to you and says, why don't we abolish families? Even the concept of families, most people know straight off, that's not right.
Every society, every civilization since the dawn of time has revolved around the family.
They are, as far as I'm concerned, the family is the main unit of society.
Yeah.
That's what everything revolves around, and that's what everything should revolve around. And interestingly enough, Connor and I recently did a book club talking about a book by Louise Perry called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, where she's approaching this case that she's putting forward from a feminist perspective. If feminism was almost purely about safeguarding the well-being of women and how men and women can live together a bit better. And the final chapter that she puts forward is that have a family. That's what she says. Yeah. Whereas on the other side of the feminist coin, the far more radical feminists, they have been putting forward this idea that family is chains, family is unnecessary obligations, family is just another form of patriarchal oppression. They've been putting forward that idea for centuries at this point, and it's never made sense, never will make sense, and I can guarantee it almost always comes from resentment for these women's own parents that they have decided to put on the rest of society.
I'm writing my third book at the moment. I'm halfway through. It should be released spring next year, maybe. And it's on feminism.
Oh, really?
So I've covered some of this.
Have you read Louise Perry's book?
I saw an interview with that she's given about the book.
Yeah.
And for me, feminism is basically trade union for other feminists. It's a power grab. That's all it's ever been, is a power grab. And the word feminism now means absolutely nothing, because there's a multi-million different versions of feminism. And in the book, I even make a joke of, we've even got the Palestinian liberation feminism, taking the mickey out of Life of Brian.
Yeah. I mean, we've got feminism supporting Eddie Izzard hitting the top of an all-women shortlist. I mean, it's ridiculous. And thank you again, Eddie, for breaking through the barriers that the system is putting forward for us.
Feminism has done nothing for women. When you go back, 100 years, 150 years ago, when women were when some women were campaigning for the vote, they were only a minority of women. Most women didn't want the vote, because they knew with the vote came responsibility. And some of them were talking about, well, I don't want to be drafted into the war.
No, of course not. I think that was the argument for male suffrage, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you had, if you've got the right to vote, you've also got the right to be drafted for war.
Yeah. But women have got the vote now. I've got nothing against that. But we need to ask women, or we need to ask feminists, when is enough? What more do you want? Feminism really should have ended, or this type of feminism should have ended in the early 70s, when we got the equal pay law in the UK. That was the end of any discrimination against women. Since then, it's all about not equal rights, it's all about special rights. I want all the equal rights you've got, but I'd like these extra ones because I'm a woman.
Well, yeah, the new rights that are being made up, let's be honest, regarding this, are all trying to liberate women from the constraints that reality and nature puts upon them now. That's
patriarchy.
Yeah, well, that's how far we've got. I think patriarchy and hierarchy in general, just the reality of the world around them has become too much for some women, where they do, if you understand that nature is putting this particular pressure on you, if say you're getting to your mid-30s and your biological clock is running out, now I don't want that oppression. I don't want anybody to judge me for this sort of stuff. It's like, sorry, there are some things that as human beings we just can't help.
Yes.
And that's just how it is. But anyway, let's take a look at this article. And read through some of the wacky reasoning that is put forward here. As you can see, the article title is for the New Statesman. It's called Red Love for All, with the subtitle, Family is a Terrible Way to Satisfy Our Desire for Love and Care, according to the writer and academic Sophie Lewis. The solution, abolish it. So Sophie Lewis is the author of the book that is being reviewed in this article, and it's very entertaining to just read through some of the arguments that are made through here, because it, once again, it's just exemplifying the lengths that some people will go to try and unchain themselves. In this image, first of all, the idea that having the white picket fence, a home, a happy family and children is being chained. You're not being allowed to experience the full range of love with these people. I would absolutely love if my fiancée and I could afford a house with a white picket fence and afford to be able to comfortably raise a few children. And she wants that as well. But sadly, the reality of the matter right now is that we can't afford that because everything's going up in price. The society that we live in is not supportive of people trying to start new families. We're being encouraged left, right and centre to not have children. Politicians over in America are saying, should we shame people for having more than 3 children? I say we should celebrate people for having more than 3 children, especially if they're actually native to England, seeing as we need to up the birth rates. I think there was one person in the Conservative Party who put forward the idea that we should give tax breaks to women, and I disagree with this because I think it should be tax breaks for couples once they've got 3 children or more, because that would encourage them, that would be an incentive for people to have more children. And leftists and Labour voters went mental.
Hungary have done something very similar.
Yes, and it's been very successful for them as far as I'm well. John's putting forward married couples as well, because we want to incentivise people.
Marriage.
For marriage.
Marriage and family, the biggest beneficiary of those 2 institutions are women.
Of course.
It protects them. It makes sure, that they've got protection. I'm tired of feminists telling me that marriage is about buying a woman and that's why you take their name, they've been bought. Well, if I was going to buy something, then there's an exchange of goods. I take off you and I give you something in return. In a marriage, a traditional marriage, you take a wife, but you also take a dowry. And that dowry basically is the father of the bride saying, she was my responsibility to look after and protect. She's now yours and I'm paying for you to look after her. And that's not buying.
No, of course not. I would go even further than using the language of responsibility. I would say that if you're married as the man, you have a moral duty to look after your wife. Yeah, you have an obligation.
You are then the king of your castle, and what does the king do? He has to protect everybody who falls under his protection, which is his wife and his children.
Yeah, and I think this whole idea of just unchaining yourself and being able to do whatever hedonistic nonsense that you want with no consequences ever is not my idea of liberation. It's not my idea of liberty. The desire to live, the ability to live a good life, a good wholesome life, for me, is my ideal of liberty and liberation.
Have you heard of something called, I think it's called the female paradox?
There's too many to count of those, but
it's some studies that have been done, and it shows that from the 50s onwards, women are getting more and more unhappy.
Oh yes,
they're
I have
having
heard
more
of this
and more
one.
freedom. They've got more stuff. They can do whatever they want. Men have stayed the same. Women used to be higher than men. They're now more unhappier than men, and it's still going down. So whatever feminism doing, whatever we're doing in society to help women, we're doing it all wrong, because the happiness across the Western world is going down continually.
Yeah, now that you brought that up, you're right, because Louise Perry mentioned it in her book, just saying, like, it seems that men can weather lots of different situations, because, like you say, their general happiness has remained the same for the most part, even if there is stuff in society right now that I would argue is actively anti-men going on. We can kind of, sadly, it's very easy for us to shut ourselves off, stay out of the public world, and kind of return to a lifestyle where we just stay in all day, play video games, order pizza, and there's a certain base level of contentment that a man can get out of that. Women are not able to experience that same privilege.
No. And that's because historically, if we weren't sat in a hut relaxing, we were out at war, dying. So we're still built like that. So the fact that we're not dying means our lives are okay.
That's an interesting way of putting it. But it's true, though.
Has been developed to sit at home looking after the children, and that made her happy. And now she's being dragged out of that into the man's world, and has not been designed for that. Some women can cope quite fine with it, not a problem. And we wonder why they're becoming more and more happy, because they think they want the role, and when they get it, it's making them unhappy. It's the Midas touch. What I think I want is killing me.
Yeah, but let's take just a quick look at what some of the arguments that are made in this article. So it starts off amusingly by just saying, let us begin by abolishing our kitchens, which you might think sounds symbolic purely, but they have actual practical reasons for wanting to abolish the kitchen. So they carry on. For the 19th century silk merchant and socialist philosopher Charles Fourier, so a French 19th century socialist, is not a good start, as far as I'm concerned, if you want practical ideas. Utopia was the kitchenless house. Men and women would live collectively, cooking instead in open common kitchens and free canteens, serving up marmalades and pastries and lemonades in abundance. It's the
word collect. Once you said collectively, it's like, right, I fully understand the whole article now.
Yeah, there you go.
Fully understand all collectively. Now, if you want to look at a collective, let's look at the kibbutz on Israel.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Yeah. They've nearly all gone now, especially the way they were run in the 60s and 70s. And why? Is because they had lots and lots of people there. People were bringing up each other's kids collectively, cooking collectively. Everything was communal. And what happened when all those children grew up? We heard about tremendous and horrendous child abuse. But why? Because you had no parents there protecting you, because it was all communal. Then we found out about the bullying, the abuse, the almost slavery, that because that's not my kid, I can treat that kid really poorly because it's not my kid. I've got no bond with that kid.
For some reason, there's this strange assumption that love is a scarce resource, that if you just put off the constraints of privatization, which is how they consider the family, they consider the family the privatization of love, that all of a sudden you'll have this superabundance where love can just be exchanged and put on everybody else equally, like I could love some stranger the same way that I could love my wife or something like that, which is just nonsense. There's things that are much deeper than just we live. Obviously, community, very, very important, but there needs to be boundaries within a community. That's how you establish the relationships that you have with one another. As somebody said, I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but good fences make for good neighbours. If you don't have that boundary, everything falls apart, everything becomes anarchy, everything becomes chaos. And like you say, it's the same with children. Nobody is more incentivized to look after their children than blood relatives. It's just obvious to everybody except these people for some reason.
It's built into us genetically. It's the same with the animal kingdom. This is genetic. It's the only way we can pass our genes on, is to make sure our children, our relatives, live and breed. And that's why we're dedicated. And that's why we have parents who will die for their children. Your next door neighbour probably won't die for your child, but you would.
Absolutely.
You know, I've got a granddaughter. If my granddaughter fell into rough seas at Blackpool,
you'd be the first one jumping in.
Yeah, and I'm not even a good swimmer. If your child fell into the water at Blackpool, I don't think I'd jump in.
No, that's somebody else's business. That's somebody else's problem.
Because I'm not going to risk. I know that I might not survive because I'm not a good swimmer. But if it was my granddaughter, I'm not thinking about it.
No, of course not. But the funny thing as well is they say that this new communal life would relieve women of the thankless and unending drudgery of an inconceivably stupid and inefficient system by which her labours are confiscated. So they're trying to make it seem as though this ideal life that you and I look towards as being a good thing, as thankless and corrupt. No, I think most women who are providers for their families, providers in the feminine sense of, providing nurture for the children, providing care, providing support for the husband, cooking meals and such, are very loved. And it's the kind of love that you don't get from just getting everybody on the street to come and cook together in the same kitchen. I mean, for one, I've lived in university accommodation. Sharing a kitchen with people is awful. Oh, yeah. It is absolutely awful. The arguments that break out purely over who's not washed the dishes is terrible. So imagine bringing the entire neighbourhood into that argument. Callum and I were talking about it before, and if you can't even get something like this to work practically on the small scale of 3 or 4 people living in uni accommodation together, how? how is it going to work on a larger scale, especially a societal scale? It's just nonsense to try and...
These articles have also... The undercurrent really is women have it so bad, but men are sat on that gold throne with servants having grapes peeled for them. And, men... And it's like, no, the men, the husbands of these women should be out working and will be working and will be doing jobs they don't even want to do, but no, they have to do it to bring the money in. They may even take promotion at work to do a job they definitely don't want to do, but it's more money, so I better do it.
I can provide a better standard of living for the people I love.
Yeah, or there's even better job. I might have to drive 2 hours there and 2 hours back every day, so it now turns into a 14-hour day I'm working. But I'll do that for my family. And these are the sacrifices men make that nobody ever notices and no one ever talks about. Because men don't want gratitude, and women also make sacrifices. They give up their careers to raise their children. Life's about sacrifices. Life's hard. But I'm sick of people talking this nonsense about being collective and how bad women have it, because we all have it bad at some point. And families is about a team. And in a team, you have different roles in a team. Your defence, I'm an attack. You're the goalie, I'll shoot the baskets. It doesn't matter. We have roles in that fit the best thing for us. And the family is a team.
Absolutely it is. And it needs to be looked at that way. Whereas the neighbourhood, the community is also a team, but a very different team.
Yes.
That needs to be managed and structured in a very different way. But amusingly, this person, Charles Fourier, if that's how you pronounce his name, he's French, so I don't really care that much. They mentioned these Fourierist communities got set up in France and in parts of America in the 1800s. Yeah. What this person fails to mention is the outcome of these communities. And if I just take it off the top of the Wikipedia page regarding
sex abuse
Fourierism,
is one of them, is it?
That's probably one of them. But even beyond that, just the main thing that it says here, never tested in practice at any scale in his lifetime, Fourierism enjoyed a brief boom in the United States of America during the mid-1840s, owing largely to the efforts of the American popularizer, but ultimately failed as a social and economic model. Not going to mention that part. Yeah. Not going to mention that their ideas that they're putting forward as new and revolutionary have been tried time again and failed every single one of those tries. But there's way more to this article, but I think you've got the gist of it. If we move to the next article that I got, thankfully, there are plenty of other women out there in the world. In fact, I would say the vast majority of women out there in the world who read this book and books like it and go, this is nonsense. This is not the kind of thing that I want, such as this Rid Wildermuth, who says, why I am not a family abolitionist, as if you need to explain it in the first place. But one of the interesting things that she says here is that people who want to abolish the family have a certain image of it in mind. The institution they want to destroy has a father at the head, the dutiful and subservient wife at his side, and the children he sired struggling against his authoritarian impulses while becoming socialized into the very situation that creates him. The son hates him, yet learns to become like him, to treat women as objects or servants. The daughter learns from the mother how to please a man like her father, how to become a fragile, pretty thing that puts out and doesn't argue. The mother, of course, is both burdened and elevated by her role as lady of the household. I'm sure such families exist because film, publishing, and other industries seem to make a lot of money telling us that they do, and I don't believe that many families like this actually exist in this kind of oppressive structure. I think that most people who write Hollywood films, most people who get book deals, because of course the publishers are going to be gatekeeping themselves, are going to be from a very particular cast of people who are all rich, upper class, entitled, and very resentful of their parents. And they project it onto the rest of the world. But yeah, they make a lot of money telling people that these families exist, but I've encountered few of them. This may be because, unlike Lewis, I lived well below the poverty line for my entire childhood and adolescence. Until I was 12, I didn't know anyone whose parents had a college education. Not unrelatedly, I knew hardly anyone whose parents both lived at home. In other words, I was part of a class that Lewis is not really addressing, the poor. For the poor, family is all you've got. So I love that point there, which is that family, like you say, in situations where people are in terrible, dire straits, is the one thing that can keep them together, the one thing that can provide some kind of stability in their life. And I'm sure in dealing with homeless people, as you have done in the past, I'm just making a wild guess here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that reconnection with family and reigniting family ties is one of the things that helps people get back on their feet, I would imagine.
Yeah, let me give you, have you got 2 minutes for a story?
Yeah, of course.
Working in Man City Centre, we saw someone, the homeless guy sat there begging for the first time, never seen him before. So we made contact with him, and he gave us a £2 coin, and he went, I'm going to spend this on drugs. But when I lived at home, I used to always give every £2 coin I got to my niece for a piggy bank for holidays. If I give you an address, would you post it to them? Because if I keep it, it's drugs in half an hour, and I've not sent him anything since 2 years I've been gone. So we took it. We sent it to his mum to give his niece. Next day, she phoned us because our phone number was on the letter we sent to her. And she went, yeah, I'm his mum. Where is he? I've not heard of him in 2 years. I presumed he was dead. And I went, well, he's in Man City Centre. She went, right, can you meet me? She goes, he lived in Plymouth. She goes, I'm actually halfway to Manchester now. Can you meet me in 2 hours' time? So we went, yeah. So we met her in Manchester. To take her to where he was. We said this might take hours to move around. We went to where we saw him yesterday. He was in the same spot. I'm going to try not to cry. Both of them crying, hugging, and she took him home because she says, you're going to live with me. Why are you living on the streets? And that's family for you. She drove all the way to Plymouth because we sent her a £2 coin, which went in the piggy bank, and to pick him up because...
And she was already halfway by the time she called you because she just getting that letter set her off.
She got the letter, she got an account, she went, because she knew the letter was from Manchester. And she was already on her way. Because if you want to answer the phone, I'd have walked around Manchester looking for him. I wasn't coming back without him. That's what family does.
That's what family does. And that's why it's important as well. And that's why I'm glad that no matter how often this stupid, destructive and evil idea to just abolish the family comes up, I'm so glad that the articles like this show that 99% of women don't want this and 99% of people don't want this. And as we referenced earlier, the government should be doing more to try and encourage people to start their own families and try and do more to support people in general. Thank you for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can subscribe to our website and become a premium member today to access all of our exclusive content, including this recent book club that Carl and Callum did, talking about Giovanni Gentile's Origins and Doctrine of Fascism. If you'd like to find more from Carl, you can find him on Getter at Carl Benjamin. Thank you and goodbye.